Hi, my name is Kaylee. My audience, we're roommates, it just didn't work out. I'm sorry. But today I will be talking about the rights of Indigenous people in the U.S. My specific purpose is to persuade my listener to take action for the Indigenous people of the U.S. My thesis statement is that the Indigenous population of the U.S. needs our help to ensure fair treatment. Now I'll begin with my introduction. The Indigenous population of the U.S. did not have rights until 1924, even though that they were here before the U.S. was colonized. I am credible enough to say this because I am 1/16th Cherokee Indian, and while that might not seem like much, my grandmother has kept their traditions and teachings very prevalent in my life. This is relevant to my audience because I believe that we are in the beginning of a modern civil rights movement, and this is time that we should also shine light on all of the people who deserve civil rights, and that includes the Indigenous peoples of the U.S. So today I will be explaining why there is a need for change for these people and their communities and how you can enact change to be a better ally. I will begin by discussing why there is a need for change. Indigenous people around the world have their trials and tribulations, but the ones in the U.S. obtain help from people like us. The problem is that there is a lack of understanding from the American public that has been denying the harrowing history of Native people in America. We must counter the stereotypical mainstream narratives about Native people by increasing the visibility of actual Indigenous communities. Another issue is that major strides have not been taken for those communities since 2007, when the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was passed. I will now discuss why change must happen. Indigenous people need change. Our natives crave action on land rights, education, justice, and more. Land has been and always will be a soft spot for natives, as it was all stolen from them. Their land should be returned to them just as easily as it was stripped from them in the early 1800s. Another matter is education. Tribal leaders argue that school curriculum should accurately depict America's genocidal history instead of glossing over the violence. The mistreatment of the natives should be addressed in the justice system as well. The state should support Indigenous communities' separate systems of justice, which focus on repairing harm instead of punishment. I will now tell you how you can get involved. Here are some suggestions for specific actions you may take to be an ally of the Native communities. You can get involved with issues that affect Indigenous people, and you can do this by voting or advocating for Native American policymakers. You may also become involved with the #LandBack movement, which advocates for land to be restored back to Indigenous communities whom it was stolen from. Another way to get involved is to participate in direct action. This can be done by attending protests and other matters. Another way you can get involved is by supporting and amplifying the work of Indigenous creatives. This can be done by shopping at Native-owned businesses and by purchasing Native-made products. And the most important way to get involved is by fact-checking the Native narrative. And this means that we must hear the voices and history of our natives to better understand what they have been through and how we may help them in the future. These actions can be done in small or large ways, but any action can lead one step closer to change. I've explained to you the great need for action for the Native communities, how you may go about this action by becoming an ally, and why it's important. Imagine in a country that belongs to your people, but you are merely treated as an insignificant member of society. This is a daily occurrence for our natives. We must understand the historical destruction that has occurred and how this destruction has made the Native community feel overwhelmingly hopeless. Today, I'm going to leave you with a statement from Native Hope. The pain and suffering of the Native American people cannot be ignored any longer. We have to acknowledge the huge barriers that exist that work to keep young natives stuck in the same cycles of abuse and poverty as they have for generations. In order to move forward into a new era of revitalizing and hope, we must comfort and understand the enormous destruction and suffering that has been caused by centuries of discrimination and hardship.